your yearly money, correct? I mean, there's not a huge touring business there, is there?
I think that's changed over the years now, and it was a sort of stand-up boom, I guess, early to midway through the first decade of this millennium, which isn't going great as millenniums go. But
it might be the last one.
Could be.
We're not going to make it very far into this one. I don't think we're going.
Yeah, that's a nice optimistic note to kick off with. But I think it did change a bit. So I started out, like I said, around about sort of 99, 2000, and then there was a TV boom in stand-up, and that's a TV boom that I managed to successfully avoid. But it did make sort of
good for you, good
individual
plan.
Solo touring more viable.
Right.
Yeah, so a lot of comedians will sort of go around. There's not necessarily the most glamorous. It's not all stadium tours.
No, I know what the one-nighter thing is, but it always seemed to me that the slog of the festivals is you keep going back until somehow or another, the plan is to build enough of an audience that, when you go back there, you're one of the big tickets and you can walk away with thousands of dollars. That's the big reward of slogging through that thing every year and going through the embarrassment and the struggle of a month in that tourist town.
Yeah, I mean there are positive sides to Edinburgh, and I've always loved doing it for the just the creative side of it, and I've never been particularly good at the sort of career side of things. But it can clearly help you evolve in terms of your sales. But I think creatively, and certainly for the comedians of my generation, it was where we went to sort of learn the art and the craft of stand-up, because you could sort of go around the circuit doing your 5-minute, 10-minute, 20-minute spots in some not always particularly helpful environments. But in Edinburgh, you could have your own hour, and I think that's where you sort of work out what you want to be as a comedian.
Oh, that's interesting. So in lieu of headlining per se on the road, that you go there for a month and you do the hour.
Yes, yeah. So the first year I did it, 2001, I was struggling to get much paid work on the circuit. And for
what
Edinburgh,
was your particular struggle, Andy? Why didn't people want the Zaltzman?
Well, I've made back to that silence that we talked about before. I think as a circuit comedian, Mark, I was hit and miss. There was an inconsistency to my game. I struck out a lot in baseball parlance and got the odd home run, but probably the stats weren't maybe good enough for you want a reliable hitter in those kind of gigs.
I'm still inconsistent, and I pride myself on that. I've spun that into a positive. It's like that's what makes me an artist, is my inconsistency.
Yes, I guess that's a good way of looking at it. But I think I learned fairly early on that it probably wasn't going to be my long-term career doing club stand. It wasn't something I was particularly good at, and that the feeling was entirely mutual between me and the club circuit, who didn't give me many bookings. So going to Edinburgh, then you have this sort of blank canvas, and you can sort of set it up how you want. You're not following a different comedian who might be a lot better than you or a lot different to you. And it's certainly where I guess found out the type of comedy that I wanted to do. Also, there's
the idea that it's a theater piece now. It's not managing a bunch of drunks at 11:30 at night. We're all going to sit here for an hour, and this thing is going to come together somehow. Perhaps may not be funny, but it'll be thoughtful. And I bought myself a little time.
Yes, I mean, ideally it'll be both funny and thoughtful. But and I think it was creatively inspiring in a lot of ways, and going to see your peers and seeing how they were doing, expanding in the same way.
Who were the guys when you were coming up? Because I don't know a lot. Who's your generation of British comics that I know you worked with John Oliver forever, and you guys are pals, and I love John a lot, and he's he's kept me sane lately. Do you guys talk often? Does he keep you sane?
Well, we don't talk as often as we used to. We used to talk every week and record it and put it out as a podcast. But since John stopped doing that, which is 4 or 5 years ago now, I see him whenever I go to New York, which, again, the current global situation isn't looking like it's going to be very soon again. And we sort of chat every now and then. He did the Bugle for the first time since he left the show just before Christmas. So that was, we got the old band back together for
how was that? It's fun, right?
It was great, actually. It was it was a lot of fun, and it was we sort of met doing the live stand-up circuit, and he did little sketches in my first Edinburgh show. I did some stuff in his first Edinburgh show the following year, 2002. We toured on the student union circuit, which is again a sort of part of my generation of British comedians. There was a kind of thriving student union circuit where you could go and experiment, and it didn't matter so much.
But that was better than clubs, right?
It was better than clubs, partly because generally, you were booked in to do a whole tour, so it wasn't like you had to succeed at every gig to get called back. So we got to know each other pretty well. Then we did some radio series together. Then when John got the Daily Show job and left me doing an Edinburgh show alone instead of a two-hander in front of about 25 people a night, he went to the biggest comedy show in the world.
How'd that go for you? How'd you take that?
Well, I'll be honest, it was a bit tricky at the time. He got offered the Daily Show job just before. It was about a month before Edinburgh started, and so we had. It was an exaggeration to say I had to rewrite the show because we hadn't entirely got around to starting writing it at that point.
That must have been a horrible conversation.
Well, not really, because it was clearly a pretty big opportunity. So
I know, but still, you had to suck it up.
I guess so. And we'd also had 2 BBC radio series cancelled around about the same time, and I found out my wife was pregnant. So it was a month of considerable upheaval for me.
Did you do a show about having a baby?
No, I've never. I did a routine. My second child I delivered in the bathroom at
You
home.
did?
I did, yes. That was
on purpose?
No, definitely not on purpose. I think it might have been an early prank by my 0-minute-old son, but it just things happened a little too fast, and I ended up having a brief but very statistically successful midwifery career.
Did you know what you were doing?
Absolutely not. I mean, I've managed to avoid picking up practical skills throughout my life.
But that was I don't think everyone has that practical skill. It's not something you plan for. It's not in the book of like home repair.
So midwifery is one of those, you've either got it or you haven't. But it was terrifying, but fortunately it was a fairly straightforward. But I was on a phone call to the emergency services.
Oh my God! Did you have to cut the umbilical cord and everything?
Didn't have to cut the cord, sadly. There was an ambulance on the way, so they sort of dealt with the.
They stepped in.
They stepped in and they did the.
Oh my God!
They closed it out, but I was. It was.
Oh my God!
It was, and I went to a British private school. Where they're specifically designed to leave you with absolutely no practical life skills. So when I found myself in that situation, there was nothing in my life that had given me what I needed.
Yeah, that's something that people take care of for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. You go to the place and they do it.
Yeah.
Out of the view of others.
Exactly. Yeah.
How did you grew up in London?
I grew up just south of London in a town called Tunbridge Wells, which is a sort of commuter belt conservative town that's sort of perfectly pleasant but not wildly exciting. And then moved to London.
What did your parents do?
My father was a sculptor.
Really? Like
yes.
A successful sculptor?
It depends how you define success, Mark. Artistically. I would say yes, and commercially, not as successul. But he, I guess,
misunderstood. Is he misunderstood?
I don't know. He set an example that, in terms of a career role model, that it wasn't necessary to get what you might call a proper job. So when I started thinking about doing stand-up, he couldn't turn around to me and say, "What are you doing with your life?" Because he'd spent the last 25 years in a barn with a load of wax and plaster. We
were
grew
they
up
big pieces? big?
They were a real mixture of. In fact, you can see it on the zoot just up behind me there. There's.
Oh yeah. Oh, he did not abstract either. Those are figures. That's a male.
Figurative. He went through all kinds of different styles, but and so he grew up surrounded by his. And
you got that in the
sculptures.
basement? Is that where you are?
I have a sort of office shed in the garden.
So that's where you hide the sculpture. That's not something you put right in the living room.
No, we've got some in the living room as well. So, well, they just moved house, and we had to clear out his studio, and so there was rather.
Is he not around anymore?
No, he's still around, but he's not really sculpting anymore. But we sort of picked up a consignment of artworks, so now our house has become something of a Zach Zaltzman art gallery.
Zach Zaltzman. So you grew up going to openings, looking at new pieces.
There weren't that many openings, but we used to go and see his studio, and he would sort of disappear off every day, and every now and again would bring home something. But it's I guess set a creative example.
Did your mother work for a living? I mean, who was?
Well, she had been a radiographer, and then
is that an X-ray tech? What's a radiographer?
Yes, yeah,
okay.
and as was, I guess, generally the way when she had 3 children, which she just sort of looked after us, and then subsequently became a teacher in her sort of mid to late 40s, and taught for sort of 15, 20 years. So. So we're quite different people, really.
And you brought up Jewish?
Well, sort of. My father was from a Jewish family. Grew up in South Africa, and his parents were Lithuanian Jews, essentially.
That ran away to South Africa.
In the sort of early 20th century. I think my grandfather went to South Africa in about 1920. My dad was born there, then moved to England, married my mother. His Jewish parents were not entirely delighted that he'd married a Gentile. My mother then converted, and they remarried. So they got married twice without getting divorced. So then my mother became Jewish, so that their children would be. So we weren't really brought up strictly Jewish. I was, I guess, the most Jewish I've probably ever felt was 8 days old. And
yeah, that's when it happens.
Still got the receipt for that. And but we didn't really we didn't sort of grow up in a Jewish community or anything, and we didn't go to Jewish schools. But my brother and I were bar mitzvahed. We used to go and have Hebrew lessons, to teach us to read bits of the Torah that we were going to need for our bar mitzvahs.
Of course, and not understand them. You don't understand
absolutely
them.
Not. Didn't know what it meant, but we knew how technically to.
Yeah, you had how to sing them. Yeah, to get the weird rhythm of the Haftorah and get through it.
Yeah.
But, so that's interesting because, I was hoping to glean something about British Jewish culture because for some reason I have this weird obsessive fascination with British Jews, and I just wonder, what they eat and how they communicate with each other in relation to, a kind of Ashkenazi American middle class Jews. Is there a similarity? I don't talk to many British Jews.
I can't really help you with that.
I know, man.
Yeah, we've.
Well, did you have a bar mitzvah party?
I did have a bar mitzvah party. It was the day after one of the largest hurricanes that's ever hit the British Isles, and so we almost couldn't get to the synagogue. We had to drive about 40 miles to the nearest synagogue. But yeah, I'd got ended up with one trumpet up and a big book about cricket. That's largely what I remember about it.
And a few bonds? No bonds?
No, I don't think so. No, it was
no cash.
Little bit of cash, but not a life-changing. I guess not a life-changing amount of cash. But
you went to a private school?
Yes.
And what is that? So, did you go to you went to one of the fancy colleges?
Well, it was, I guess it was sort of traditional English private school. I didn't, most of the pupils were boarded. It was an all-boys school, but I was a day pupil, so my father would drive me in every morning.
Oh, so some of them would sleep there?
Yeah.
And you had to wear the blazer?
Yes, a nice sort of tweedy jacket. Very sort of traditional kind of British education, and it was good in some ways, but less good in others. Suggested.